I also see you're censoring now the topics.
Yes, we're not gonna do that to them. I think
that is the single greatest story of this campaign.
No, that is what you would like to laugh at, but only reason why I don't,
I put it out there, because I didn't want to surprise you with it and throw you off, so I put it out there kind of as a censorable item.
Yeah, I don't want to do that to them.
Tell me what a good joke is. What are you gonna cancel me?
No, right now they're too sensitive. Okay.
Good Lord.
Oh, that's funny.
In fact, I'm going to open the episode with that line.
No. Okay, let's go.
I won't. There is no way to stop me from being disturbed.
Oh.
All right. And 3, 2, and 1. Welcome to episode 42 of Black, White, and Blue in the South, a podcast discussing Democratic politics with a Southern flair. I'm Bill Kimler.
I'm Jamil Brooks.
And if you were excited about our return from summer hiatus, but then wondered why we didn't release an episode last week, do not fret. We have moved to a bi-weekly schedule because we need to focus on our campaigns over the next few months.
Yeah.
We will have longer episodes to make up for it, but we'll be releasing every other Wednesday instead of weekly and give you more time to digest the brilliance of our political discourse. If you are not satisfied with this change, you can request a full refund for what you paid to listen to this show. Direct all comments and requests for refunds to Dr. Jamil Brooks at idon'tgiveadang@gmail.com.
I need to make sure I get that domain.
We are coming to you from Greenwood, South Carolina, a little red county in a very red state, and the murder capital of the United States, which you'll hear a lot more about later in this episode. Stay tuned. If you like what you hear and think others ought to be listening as well, please leave a rating, write a little review, tell your friends about us, follow us on social media, or better yet,
happy birthday to you.
Send us a birthday cake with one candle on it because Black, White, and Blue in the South is officially 1 year old this week.
How cute is that?
Happy birthday, Jamil.
Oh, happy birthday, Bill.
In July of 2023, you and I recorded our very first episode. How about that?
That is too cute.
We met at the public library with a pair of $30 USB microphones and my laptop. We did not plan or obsessively prep like we do today. We had no agenda, and you know what?
It was great.
It showed.
But it was great. It was great. It was just us doing what we normally do.
All right, be honest. When's the last time you've listened to that first episode?
Probably
not since July.
I won't go back there.
Okay, I'm taking us back there. So,
oh my God.
We're going to listen to what Black, White, and Blue in the South sounded like
as a baby
1 year ago.
Okay.
And not the mature, polished, professional dynamite that we are today. So here were literally the first 40 seconds of our first episode ever. Here we go. Welcome. This is the inaugural recording of Black and Blue. Nope. See, I've already got it wrong. I don't even know the name of our podcast. Thank you for the tip. Already we're editing and we're only 5 seconds into our podcast career. This is the inaugural episode of Black, White, and Blue in the South.
Yes.
My name is Bill Kimler.
And I'm Jamil Brooks.
And we are your hosts. We are also the first... No, you're the first vice chair. I am the chair.
Yes.
We are the top two chairs of the Greenwood County Democratic Party in red old Greenwood, South Carolina.
Yes.
And we are now officially out of material.
And we are.
So that was an auspicious opening.
Oh, yeah.
How did those opening words inspire you? Can you believe that?
I thought they were truly a representation of us.
It really was.
That's us.
In fact, you can tell, when I said we were out of material, we literally were out of material. I had nothing ready after those first 40 seconds.
We had nothing.
In fact, I brag about that. Let's listen to another clip from our first episode.
Okay.
I listen to 100 podcasts. I'm subscribed to a whole bunch. Some of them are just downright terrible, and I think as long as we can, be better than the worst podcast.
We will not be terrible, okay? Let's just say we'll get this first one out of the way, and then we'll take over.
Yeah, so this truly is, no format, none of us prepared. So you're truly hearing off-the-cuff comments.
Yeah, this is really us. No preparation.
How about that?
I like that.
Yeah. You like the genuineness?
I do. I still think we have that part, though.
We do.
Yeah,
most of our show isn't prepared.
Yeah, we just have content now. But I mean,
this was my favorite clip of the entire episode when I faked you out on day one. Listen to this.
Gosh. Because if they're running on a Democratic ticket, they have the choice to be heard. They have a chance. They should have a chance to be heard. Why ostracize them?
We have a call coming in. You want to take a call?
Oh, can we?
No, I'm kidding.
I was so excited. Let's start this.
I just wanted
That was
to see your
perfect.
face.
That was perfect. Let me hear what someone else thinks about that. See how I welcome that? Even though I didn't know, I said let them come
You're
through.
good for anything I throw your way. That's awesome.
Share the knowledge.
And the more off kilter I throw you, the deeper your accent gets.
Does it really?
It totally does.
Oh, wow.
It's so much fun to hear.
I think that's kind of cool.
So you see how I love just to torture people.
Yes.
In fact, you saw that with my interaction with some little kids at the festival this past week.
Oh, yeah.
You saw my parenting style. But the kids love it. It keeps them on their toes, keeps them sharp.
It does. They left smiling.
And I've got one final clip to play where I give credit to somebody without whom this podcast never would have gotten off the ground.
Now, I want to give credit to where credit's due. I want to give a shout out to my friend, Barrett Gruber. He is the owner of the Gruber Entertainment Network. I don't know if that's what it's called. I made that name up. But he does run several different podcasts and has a little bit of a nice side gig going. I got to know him through this podcast called the All About Nothing podcast. These guys reached out to me when I ran for State House last summer. And they were on this kick. Then they were a podcast based out of Columbia. Now they're in Lexington. They interviewed most of the first-time Democratic candidates running for office last year. They even interviewed Lisa Ellis.
Okay.
She ran for state superintendent.
Yes.
And then even most recently, Barrett scored an interview with Marianne Williamson, a candidate for president.
Yeah, launched her career successfully.
He's got some buddies that do the recordings with him. I've been on his show 3 times now.
Okay.
And just had a blast and said, you know what, we can do this.
Yes.
So thank you, Barrett.
Wow. Thanks, Barrett.
And I have a surprise for you, Jamil.
I don't know if I can take it.
Yeah, you're going to take it. You're going to take it and love it. I have on the line with us right now the one and only Barrett Gruber from the All About Nothing podcast. And what the pod was that, Barrett? Would you say hello?
Hello.
You did not. You did not. You AI'd Barrett. That is not him.
Is this AI Barrett?
It is me. No, this is 100% me.
You are lying.
And actually, AI has gotten so good, you and I can have this conversation like we didn't see each other yesterday.
Shut up. It's the one and only.
It is the one and only.
Yay.
Now, Jamil.
So did y'all plan this and I not know this yesterday?
This was totally planned as of 8 a.m. this morning.
Okay, great.
When I thought of the idea.
Okay.
See, and even then, I still gave Barrett more of a heads up than he gave me to show up on his show last time.
It's nothing about professionalism.
No, not at all.
It has nothing to do with professionalism.
Everything I learned about this business, I learned from Barrett.
It's all about instinct.
And we are out of time. Barrett, I am sorry. We'll have to let you go.
Let me in. Okay.
All right, Barrett. So now you have had a chance to dwell upon the birthday message you wanted to give us. And in fact, you even went all the way out of your way to dress in your birthday suit, which I think was a little bit above and beyond.
Look, Bill, for you, I will dress in anything you ask me to. And when you requested this earlier, I said, yeah, 100%, nothing but naked. There's nothing I wouldn't do for Dr. Jamil Brooks and Mr. Bill Kimler for the Black, White, and Blue in the South podcast.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. So, again, I'm sitting here getting ready to, look at that.
And left us out.
with a little celebratory. We'll just right there in the camera, and then I'll
All right, well, except for my black, white, and the blue
well,
in the South water.
that hits differently. That hits differently though.
Well, thank you. And honestly, if it wasn't for Barrett got us started with the right equipment.
Yes.
He helped us with the online service that allows us to upload our episodes and publish it to all the mainstream podcast groups. I would never have figured any of that out on my own. So for that, Barrett, we thank you for being our podfather and giving birth to black, white, and blue in the South.
Job well done.
I don't know why, but it makes it sound like somebody needs gloves and detergent. No, from the perspective of what the pod was that and all about nothing, Black, White, and Blue in the South is probably one of the most successful podcasts that I have seen grow from start to start to now. Mm-hmm. And I am in awe of the fans of your podcast. And, it obviously is reaching. I sneak in there and look at the analytics and like, how?
You obviously haven't met our fans to be in awe of them, but they say thank you, I'm sure.
No, my mother is such a big fan of your show. And all she does, she tells me over and over and over how often she wished that you all lived in her county, in Barrow County, Georgia.
Oh.
And listening to you, Bill makes it sound like he doesn't prepare for this as much as I know he does, because Bill is similar enough to me that I guarantee you he has almost the entire thing written out.
Yes. You know him well.
Well, we say hi to Mama Gruber.
Yay.
And appreciate your fandom.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
I feel it every time she hits play. I get a little tingle. So thank you, Mama.
No, it's a fantastic program you guys do, and it is a unique service that's being provided to individuals and hordes of individuals across the state and in places where we all have like-minded ideas of what this country can be and how we haven't yet achieved it, but inch by inch, centimeter by centimeter, we're working our way into at least professing the truth, hoping that it'll catch fire.
Yeah.
You can catch Barrett on the All About Nothing podcast. And if you want to delve into the dark side of TikTok and Instagram, follow them on What the Pod Was That, which is one of my favorite podcasts that I will never admit to in public. But they're absolutely one of my favorites. You are the proprietor of, I think I didn't know the name of it at the time, but I now know it as Big Media Incorporated. What is it? Big Media Incorporated and Big Media LLC, Big Media Empire. What are we?
We pretty much just gave a title to it so we could put something on a T-shirt.
So you haven't even registered it, so I can go in and swoop that name.
We need the T-shirt.
You
Did
could.
You see the T-shirt?
You could.
Look at us.
The T-shirts got Black, White, and Blue in the South on there as well.
You lift that up any higher, you will be in your birthday suit.
Well, we'll just do it right there. But
flash like we're at New Orleans Mardi Gras here.
There's
somebody
stuff
threw beads
under
at
this.
Somebody threw beads at Barrett.
No beat throwing.
All About Nothing. We are working our way into Columbia history. We were the first podcast recently to actually do a live event from Hendrix Bar specifically for Soda City Comic Con. We've partnered with them pretty heavily this year. We're going to have a lot to do out there come August 24th and 25th, but it doesn't pay us anything. The only thing we get out of it is occasionally a drink, or we get to go to an event. And but I think for the most part, it's good therapy is what it is.
Well, great. Well, I know that this podcasting venture has paid for multiple houses for you and some luxury cars. So we're hoping to be able to scratch up to your level at one point.
I told you before, it's not a Bugatti, it's a Bugatti. A Bugatti is considerably different than a Bugatti.
I'll always make that mistake. Well, Barrett, we thank you for coming on and wishing us well. This really made our day.
Yes, it did.
Thank you.
And with
you
that,
guys
we'll
keep doing
release
what
you.
you're doing.
And
yeah.
Will do.
All right. Take care,
guys.
Gerber.
Happy birthday.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Oh, I got surprised like no other.
How about that? You see?
Yeah.
You see?
Every now and then.
I can do nice things and be nice once in a while.
Yeah.
Well, let us know what you think by dropping us a note at blackwhiteblue@gmail.com. Send us your comments, questions, and topic ideas. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Threads, and Mastodon. You see, on those sites, we share video clips of our episodes and news articles that'll enrich what you'll hear today. So look at our Pulitzer Prize-winning show notes, where you can find links to that and more. Well, welcome back to the studio, Jamil.
Yay.
Before we get to business, I want to open up just with something I saw on Facebook, not maybe a half hour before we started recording today, that just infuriated me.
Okay.
And I wanted just to share it before we get to our news and other updates. This came from my Aunt Karen. You may know her as the recipient of the kidney that I donated 2 years ago.
Yeah.
She posted on Facebook the following. She wrote, on 15 meds, had to change insurance companies due to turning 65. So far, the insurance company has denied 7 meds. Of course, they are the most important ones. Denied anti-rejection meds to keep my new kidney transplant from rejecting, and diabetes meds. Still trying to get exception approval for 3 months. Now, I am about to go ballistic on this insurance company. This is me talking. Because that's my kidney.
That's your kidney.
That if I went through all of that to have an insurance company say, nah, you know what, your rejection meds are not medically necessary, I swear to God, I'm going to camp out in front of that insurance company headquarters and raise such a ruckus that they are going to close down their shop when they hear how public I can make this story known. Let's hope that this gets resolved. Otherwise, I will devote my entire life to the awareness of this insurance company rejecting my kidney.
Here I go going into the policy part of it. I'm wondering what those rejection letters said. Like, why is it that they're not taking these particular meds?
That's my kidney. I don't care.
Typically, your provider writes the statements to say these are a necessity, and if you can't get the generic, then you get the non-generic, right?
Right. From what I'm hearing, it's playing that red tape game of, well, we need these records, we need this signature from the doctor, and the doctor's given it a dozen times already, and they've just stopped responding to their incessant requests. They keep losing all the paperwork.
Okay.
And so therefore they end up rejecting, saying, well, we didn't get the right code or we didn't get this right thing. They got everything they need.
Yeah.
They got everything.
They better get it approved.
So anyhow, our medical system here in this country is completely upside down over something like this where, you know, before she was fine, she turned 65 and now she has to get new insurance. And now she is on the verge of losing her kidney, losing my kidney that I loaned to her. I expect to get it back at some point, by the way.
You can't.
Oh.
Is it Medicare?
I don't know what it is. That what I read to you was all that I know. So I hope to get more details and provide some updates.
Okay. Calm down.
I'm fired up.
Calm down.
I'm fired up.
Calm down.
Fired up! Ready to go!
You like that transition?
Yeah, I was gonna tell you, don't go though. Don't go yet.
Fired up! Ready to go!
Before we get into a lot of the heavy news articles, we're going to talk a little bit about our campaigns. Both Jamil and I are running for office. I'm running for State House in South Carolina, District 13.
State House, South Carolina, District 12.
We are neighbors, both running for the same cause.
Yeah.
And there's been a little bit that we want to update on over the past couple of weeks. So, Jamil, I'll start off with you to talk about where you were all day yesterday.
All day yesterday with a capital A, a capital L, and a capital L. You can make that boldface and underline. If you want to italicize it, you can.
I don't know that I can do all that on a podcast, but you know what? I'll go into the editing studio and figure it out.
But so I got to spend a day with candidates and campaign team members from South Carolina with the training that the South Carolina Democratic Party did. And so most individuals there had probably gone through several other trainings, but this was just a really good icing on the cake. It gave great foundational information in the event that you missed something, gave great tactics, strategies, very organized. It was a benefit. So even though you gave up your day, you gained so much. And then, as I always say, whenever I leave Columbia, it's just so good to have that opportunity to get that, like to get re-energized on your why. Because this, you know, if you don't know, the campaign journey is a long, hard journey. So whenever you can have that little boost that gets you the energy you need to continue on is always great. And yesterday was that.
I understand you ran into fellow guest of our show, Jessica Spearman, who's running for state senate. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. So we pull up at almost the same time. Of course, we walk in together.
Aw.
And we use that time. And I also ran into Clemson, which we're going to interview. So
Nice.
hilarious. Side story, Clemson told a great story about our podcast when we met. He said that they were driving back from one destination, and the way our podcast helped them take a 4-hour trip and make it feel like nothing was amazing. So you would say something that would generate conversation, and then I would say something, and that would generate another conversation, and they just went from episode to episode. So that was cool.
But did he also mention that it was only supposed to be an hour-long trip, and they just kept getting lost and missing turns because of our podcast?
Maybe that was it. We were just that entertaining.
It's like, damn it, we missed the turn again. Circle around.
So we met Clemson, which is really cool, and then continued to like reunite with individuals that I've seen on this journey before at different capacities.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. Shout out to the South Carolina Democratic Party for pouring into the candidates and trying to ensure that everyone knows what they need to know, has the resources that they need to have. So this is for candidates to know you're not out there on your own. Reach out.
Fantastic. Now, I didn't go, although I was invited, because I had a commitment already. One, we had our Democratic Party breakfast meeting the same time.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have both of us out. And we had over 80 people show up again for breakfast, and 2 amazing speakers.
Yeah, I heard.
A young man named Jonah,
Yeah.
who standing ovation for over a minute.
Wow.
He gave a 30-minute speech that rivals anything you will hear at the DNC convention
Oh, cool.
in a couple of weeks.
Cool,
He was
cool.
amazing. So I can't wait for you to see that.
Okay.
And we'll have that up on YouTube in a couple of days. And then, of course, state Senate candidate Francie Cleckley
Yeah.
has just gotten better and better every time she speaks.
good.
She gave a wonderful speech herself.
I heard good things about it.
Although she was texting me during Jonah's speech, she's like, "Can I go next month?" You know, Jonah was just had everybody riveted. She's like, "I got to follow this guy."
Yes, you
So I said,
do.
"Yes, you do. You
Oh,
don't get to pick
wow.
and choose."
Wow.
So
That's cool.
she went up and knocked it out of the park. But the other commitment that we had was at the biggest festival that occurs in Greenwood every year. It's
Yeah.
called the Festival of Discovery, which involves dozens of barbecue vendors, all-day live music of blues and other types all over the place. So it draws in tens of thousands of people every year. One of
Yeah.
the biggest events in Greenwood. And we were able to get a table at this event with our banner, with all of our campaign materials. We did it from Thursday through Saturday.
Yes.
You were there for the first 2 days.
Yeah.
And what was your impression of what that was like?
Well, first, I loved our location. Listen, that was the thing. But I also love the way.
Well, wait a minute. Don't drive past that location bit a little bit too far. Explain what you liked about it. What did you like?
That we weren't in the sun.
Yes.
I mean, that was literally the coolest spot ever.
I mean, the temperatures only went up every day. It started off at 93 degrees, and then yesterday the high hit 96, 97.
Oh, my goodness.
And we were in the shade. We sat right outside of Buena Vista Cafe,
Yeah.
Cuban Cafe, and they gave us the spot. We had Spanish music playing
Yes.
all day long.
Yes.
Fruity cocktail drinks being served to all of Greenwood.
I mean, it was just the
So much
perfect
fun.
location, but they've always been so sweet to us. And then you think about all of the individuals that came in to actually barbecue. So imagine the heat, then you standing behind the grills because you want to make sure your barbecue is the best. Like, it was super hot. So
It
our
was.
location, they took really good care of us. So that was my
we had
highlight.
2 items at our table that were a hit. Francie Cleckley had some hand fans,
Yeah.
the ones that you wave back and forth with her name and logo on it.
Yeah.
And those, every last one were given out. Everybody stopped by and grabbed a Francie fan.
Yeah.
And then I had a cooler filled with
Bill water.
with Freedom water. I had actually figured a way out to print my logo and face and name on little bottles of water and had them chilled and gave them out for free.
Yeah.
So everybody got a little taste of Democratic Freedom water, regardless of what party or who you voted for. That was a huge hit as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the literature was flying off the table and everybody was getting to know us. It was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. And people could be a little nervous about
Yeah.
being in public like that. It was fine.
Yeah, I think our approach, though, is what made it so fine. You have to understand, we're just not the typical candidate. So general conversation starts a conversation with us. And so just being open and being present was it.
Right. I did have, just one person actually stopped by that tried to debate me on a topic, which I thought was interesting. So the city of Greenwood, when you walk into the perimeter of this festival, there are signs posted everywhere that says no concealable weapons allowed.
Correct.
Which is the right of any group or organization to do, and that's what the city police of Greenwood felt comfortable with. They didn't want people walking around with open carry weapons.
Correct.
Because of just the number of people packed into such a small space. Of course, you go online and you find that some people are upset by that, think it infringes on their constitutional rights. Even our local representatives wrote a letter to the city decrying that stance that they took, saying that, it is against the U.S. Constitution. Yet these same local representatives enjoy that privilege at the State House, where it is a law that says no concealable weapons allowed on State House grounds. So it's one of those safety for me, but not for thee
Exactly.
type of stances, which I find entirely hypocritical.
Yeah.
The other thing was a young man came by and asked me what my opinion was on constitutional carry. We've talked about that in episodes past, but basically South Carolina passed a law that says we no longer have to have training in order to carry a concealable weapon around.
Correct.
They've done away with that training requirement and lowered the age to 18 for which you are able to carry such weapons. And he wanted to know my opinions. And of course, you've heard our opinions before. We think training is a good idea.
Yeah.
We feel like you ought to have the right to carry, but can we impose some safety restrictions? And then he said, well, that's not what the Constitution says. So now I was getting constitutional lessons from a 21-year-old. All right, which was fine. Yeah. But the thing they don't realize is that we negotiate and interpret the Constitution all the time.
Kind of like people do the Bible.
Yes, it's very much treated the same way. Mm-hmm. It's whatever is most convenient for your worldview. And then I gave him an example. I says, do you feel comfortable if half the passengers on your transcontinental flight from the East Coast to the West Coast had, half the people carrying AR-15s on it? Would you feel good about that? He was like, well, hum. He didn't mention it. So you agree there should be limits. Do you feel like people should walk around carrying flamethrowers around without any training or permits? And he's like, well, that's not what we're talking about. So you see that there are limits that people are okay with.
Yeah.
And the final point I wanted to make, and I didn't mention it to this guy, it's like, let's say that I was in favor of this. Let's say that I was okay with getting rid of the training requirements. Is that the most pressing issue that South Carolina is facing that lawmakers should be working on right now? What problem did it solve for anybody? Where was the big clamoring for this that saves a lot of lives or feeds hungry bellies or makes poor people able to make their next rent payment? Where is any of that in all the work done for constitutional carry?
And there isn't. There isn't. Their focus is in the wrong place. But I think this is one of the strategies that they'll typically use, where they'll throw a treat or a bone to see who bites at it. And we know that this has been a hot topic. So what we can do is we'll throw this out here, and hopefully that'll distract the person, because the major issues we are not going to resolve. And it did just what they wanted it to do. It took the eyes off of the spots that we needed to focus on.
That's something you've been saying since day one.
Distraction.
Well, at this point, we're going to switch over to some news, and there has been plenty of news these past few days.
For up-to-the-minute reports, stay tuned to this station. Now the news.
Of course, the biggest piece of news, and it seems like every week there is a new biggest piece of news of the year, but this one trumps them all, and I use that word accidentally. There was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life this past weekend, and by the time you're hearing this, we're recording on a Sunday afternoon, and I'm sure even while we're recording, news is changing, more information's coming out, things are happening. So by the time you hear this when we release midweek, it's probably out of date and more stuff is known, so you'll have to forgive us for that. But still, we could not go through this episode without at least acknowledging what happened, sharing what we know as of now, and trying to make sense of this whole thing. But before we do that, I first want to recognize that there was a truly innocent victim in this. There was a father that I had read about, a father and a husband who lost his life in the crowd defending his wife and daughter. I mean, when the shots were fired, he literally pulled his wife and daughter down through his body on top of them and took the bullet. I read the account from his daughter online, and it had me to tears. So I couldn't bring myself to even read what she wrote here in this episode. But I want to say that despite everything we're about to say and share, this is a truly innocent human being that this is where the true tragedy is.
Yeah.
So here's what we know so far. Trump was at one of his rallies in Pennsylvania, and there was a shooter on a roof by the name of Thomas Matthews Crooks. And as is kind of the pattern with every mass shooting that has been reported in the last 10 years, it was a young white male, a loner, a little on the odd side. There's a lot of conflicting information coming out about him. But before we get into him too much, where were you when you first heard this news story?
Coming from Columbia.
You were on the road from
That's
Columbia.
in the state, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really weird. I'll tell you this. I was having a conversation at the training, and we were talking about the state of the nation right now, where we are and how volatile it is. And the comment was made like, well, one of the things that we just don't want anything to happen to Trump while he's on this campaign trail. And I thought, and we'll talk more about this comment, but as soon as that comment was made, we were all like, you're exactly right. We don't want any distractions. Like, no one needs to take any type of attempts on this man's life. Let him run his campaign. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. The point that you feel like you have to go and take someone out is just to the extreme. And so we were all speaking against that thought and that fact. And then I'm driving down the interstate, and then I get a message, and it is saying, you're not going to believe this. Someone just took an attempt on Trump's life. And I went, oh, crap. Yeah.
Well, I was at dinner with my wife, and the news headline came across the phone. And at first, you couldn't tell that there was a shot at Trump. You saw him duck down. You saw people scrambling around. You heard the pop, pop, pop in the background. But then, as people are trying to interpret what they saw, they're like, well, it looks like he hurt himself as he tried to go down, like he bumped against the podium or something. But no, it looks like the bullet truly did graze his ear. And had it been just 1 inch over, we'd be having a different conversation today, if one at all.
Yeah.
If one at all. So going back to the suspect, because that's where all the attention turns. And if you're as plugged into social media as I am, it just becomes a blame game from the very first second. Everybody knows exactly why this happened and who this was and who's at fault, up and down. So I'll share this from Reuters. They said that the state voter records, because that's where everybody runs to first, shows that this guy was a registered Republican, 20-year-old. And in fact, this upcoming election would have been the first time he had been legally allowed and old enough to vote in a presidential race.
Wow.
So just a kid. Then they say that when he was 17, so we're going back to 2021, he made a $15 donation to Act Blue.
Yeah.
And we know Act Blue was a fundraising platform for Democratic candidates. And this is odd because when you look at the Act Blue record, which people have posted, it shows it as coming from Pittsburgh, but this guy did not live in Pittsburgh. He lived in another town, and I forget the name of the town. And plus, how many 17-year-olds do you know have credit cards that are able to, to donate to a political campaign, right?
Yeah.
So it was, it wasn't even to a candidate. It was for the Progressive Turnout Project, which uses Act Blue for their fundraising. So there's that report coming out, and we'll have to see if that holds true. Then in 2022, he graduates high school. Graduates high school and received a $500 Star Award from the National Math and Science Initiative. So what does this tell you about this guy? Nothing. However, there was, from an unverified source on Twitter, and it's been repeated, so I'm guessing maybe this is true now from multiple sources, that he was killed. Of course, the shooter himself was killed by the Secret Service, and he was wearing what's called a Demolition Ranch t-shirt. Demolition Ranch is a popular gun website that is out there promoting guns and weapons and, that fringe side of militias. They're a big fan of militias and militias are fans of them, I should say. So this story about this young guy, and they interviewed his father right away, and of course his father's like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I was going to
They're
say.
interviewing his ex-schoolmates. They said he didn't have a lot of friends. He seemed like a loner. We're going to learn more about this guy, probably more than we ever wanted to know.
Yeah.
But where the attention has really gone to is the Secret Service.
Yes, it has.
It has gone to the Secret Service. So there was an interview conducted by BBC News with an eyewitness of that shooter. Have you seen this yet?
I don't know. Let's see. I've seen so much of it.
I'll put this up on the screen here because you're not going to believe this.
And watch and listen to the rally, right? We couldn't see him, but we could hear him. So we walked up, and probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here. I have no idea, but we noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle.
A rifle.
We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police were like, huh, what? Like they didn't know what was going on. We're like, hey, right here on the roof. We can see him from right here. We see him. He's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him off the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for 2-3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
So you're certain that the shots came from that guy on the roof?
100%. 100%.
And he was up there for a couple of minutes?
He was up there.
You saw him up there for a couple of minutes?
Absolutely. At least 3 to 4 minutes.
And you were telling the police and the Secret Service?
We were telling the police. We were pointing at him for the Secret Service, who were looking at us from the top of the barn. They were looking at us the whole time when we were standing by that tree.
Could they see
Binoculars.
Could they see him?
Probably not, because the roof, the way the slope went, he was behind where they could see. But why is there not Secret Service on all of these roofs here? This is not a big place.
Did you see, obviously everyone, when the shooting started, everyone was very panicked. Did you see what happened to him at all?
Oh, yeah, they blew his head off.
Okay, sorry.
Secret Service blew his head off.
Okay, just be careful because we don't quite know who's watching, but you're pretty sure they shot the guy?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Yep.
You saw that happen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And did you see them go up to him afterwards, or?
They crawled up on the roof. They had their guns pointed at him, make sure he was dead. He was dead, and that was it. It was over.
Wow. So you had not seen that before. What do you think? What's your reaction?
It's a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions.
So this is where the focus has been pretty much all day today, this being Sunday when we're recording this. And from the Economic Times, they say that the attack has raised serious concerns about the security protocols that were in place for protecting Trump. Republican lawmakers have vowed to launch swift investigations into how the shooter managed to evade Secret Service agents, climb into a rooftop, fire multiple shots before being neutralized. And in this case, I got to agree with them. I think there ought to be some swift investigations happening.
Well, the breakdown is from the very beginning. When have you ever seen that lack of a protection on a president?
You and I sat at a fundraiser rally with Joe Biden.
And I couldn't
remember
sneeze
those
without bumping into a Secret Service man.
There was one Secret Service guy, I swear his entire job was to stare at me the whole time. And there were 800 of us in that room. But I think he was devoted to looking at me.
It seems like this was just so ill prepared. And regardless of who it is and what your stance is, if he is out here and your job is to protect, it just seemed, who dropped the ball? Mm-hmm. Who dropped the ball on this? He was that open. And I even watched when they go to cover him after he's been apparently struck, right? They go to cover him, and I don't know Secret Service, so don't come for me in terms of their protocol and how they do things. But I just kept wondering, if there's a shooter and we don't know we have him, why is Trump's head still so visibly exposed?
Oh, you saw from the video that
Secret Service piled on top of Trump, and Trump stood up to raise his fist in the air because he immediately saw the opportunity.
Dude, people are trying to kill you.
He was putting all the Secret Service people in jeopardy because every last one of them was saying, get down, and they were surrounding him, trying to pull him down, and he refused to go down.
And his head was still up, and I'm thinking, this is not the way this is going to end. No, sir.
President Biden and the administration, they have reached out to Trump. They, apparently the two presidents spoke to each other. It was very cordial. In fact, Biden's campaign says they're pausing all outbound communications. So they're putting a pause on their own campaign, taking down TV commercials and other online ads, etc., in the aftermath of this deadly shooting. So we'll see where that goes.
Let's talk about that point. Do you think that's a good move from the Biden administration after the hit that he's already taken? In terms of the credibility and his ability to be able to be a valuable candidate. Do you think that he should pause all ads at this point to allow, what are we pausing for, I guess?
Well, I think it's in line with the Biden persona. So if you think of some of Joe Biden's most endearing characteristics, it's his sense of humanity. It's his compassion for others. And I think by putting on pause, that's emphasizing who he is as a person. I don't see him doing anything different. I don't see him going on the attack. I don't see him, he can go on pause for a little bit. This is totally within his character.
So not questioning his character, because I agree with you on that. But do you think that this is a good move for him?
To me, it doesn't matter if it's good or not. He's doing it. I don't see it being a good move for them to continue with any type of attack ads at this point.
You can pause the attack ads, but I think the Biden administration should continue with the Biden administration plans and publications and announcements so that there is no delay in having a continuous flow of information so that people still know what they stand for. Because I have to ask the question, do you even believe that the Trump campaign will discontinue pushing their agenda? Is the other thing that I'm wondering. It's just about timing, and
the Trump campaign doesn't have to do a darn thing. They have an army of spokespersons doing the battle for them. So I'll pick one out right here. Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina immediately tweeted yesterday, this is the day that the attack occurred, he said, "Let's be clear. This was an assassination attempt aided and abetted by the radical left and corporate media incessantly calling Trump a threat to democracy, fascist, or worse."
See, now that's the stuff that really bothers me. And I think this is the type of stuff that festers up the hate that this nation is currently showing. It is a entity, or that particular section of that population only wants to, and I'm separating the two, and I had this conversation with my son earlier. I'm separating Republicans from MAGA. Because in my mind, I'm starting to see a clear distinction. And so for those individuals that are representing the MAGA population, what you do not realize, or maybe you do, is that there was a 20-year-old young man that supposedly attempted to kill a presidential candidate. The 20-year-old young man no longer has life, right? The individuals that attended this event are going to suffer some type PTSD from being a part of this event. And then we also had an innocent man lose his life trying to protect his family, right? But now we see people have lost life. We know that someone has been killed. And then instead of saying, enough is enough, Tim Scott comes out and says, oh, it's the far left.
Ratchets it right up. Feeds right into the very thing that's dividing and angering the country.
Who else do you want to lose a life for this?
Now, contrast that with the Biden team, and this is from AP News. I'm going to quote AP News because there's another point of this quote I want to point out. But they said, quote, Biden, speaking without a teleprompter, said he was waiting for additional information before formally calling the attack an attempted assassination on the former president. After midnight, he returned to the White House, cutting short a weekend stay in Delaware. So obviously this was early on, and I think right now the general consensus that this was an attempted assassination, but you can see that he was being cautious with his words,
not feeding into any of the conspiracies or the fervor or using any type of wild language, and cut short his weekend stay because he says, this is a serious business.
Yeah.
But I also want to call out the AP News by having to throw that phrase, speaking without a teleprompter. Like, why do you need to throw that into that statement? Why can't you just say Biden said he was waiting for additional information?
I don't know. I don't have a problem with it, though, because that lets you know that's truly him.
Yeah, but any other day, would they have put that in there?
No.
When anybody else speaks, do they say, hey, Jamil, without a teleprompter, said the following?
And they're probably trying to point out the fact that he wasn't being fed what to say.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It just seems so unnecessary, and it actually distracted me from what was going on.
I agree. Do you think the trend that is buzzing on social media is that this was staged?
I've heard that too, and I'm not going to give that any credence or even want to give that any words. I mean, ever since Sandy Hook, when Alex Jones says that was staged, a false flag, every shooting thereafter has been labeled the same thing. So I'm not going to give that any credence here at all until you see more information.
Yeah.
If this was staged, it's going to come out because, quite honestly, human beings are not very good at planning and keeping stuff secret.
Correct.
They aren't.
And that's all I keep saying is let this not be a part of any plan, because this was the worst thing ever.
It was. Well, I want to end up with one thing and just kind of draw a comparison to the outrage at this shooting versus a different response when it comes to school shootings. I've been seeing that comparison being made all over the place. People saying, boy, I wish lawmakers were as outraged over school shootings as they were over this Trump rally shooting.
Okay.
And I want to play a clip from Donald Trump himself speaking at a school shooting in Iowa earlier this year.
To the entire community, we love you, we pray for you, and we ask God to heal and comfort really the whole state and the pain that you have. This is something that's very unique to your state. We're really with you as much as anybody can be. It's a very terrible thing that happened, and it's just horrible to see that happening. That's just horrible. So surprising to see it here. But we have to get over it. We have to move forward. We have to move forward.
Oh, shit.
Well, that was a good unfiltered moment
My
from
bad.
Dr. Jamil Brooks.
My bad.
But yes, Trump said to a school shooting, no, time to get over it, time to move on. And so maybe we give the same recommendations here.
So I said that one thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out was that I'm disgusted at his fear and hate mongering, because this is what this whole campaign has been about since the loss. That was not the loss, right? And the separation, what people have to understand is that separation has never yielded positive, permanent results. You get a little separation here, you might see a glimpse of a rise in an area you want, but it doesn't.
I'm sorry, what do you
stay.
mean by separation?
To continue to use hate and fear to pull groups apart, that's separation, right? It's never proven anything, and it's never given you a good long history of positive influence. There's always going to be those ebbs and flows. And I said when I saw this is a prime example of why the people who attempt to remove history from the history books should stop doing it, because most people with a little bit of sense learn from their mistakes. But if you wipe out history, what will you learn from?
So we'll move away from the national stage and bring it a little more local to South Carolina. We actually have a series of 3 small articles about South Carolina education. And Dr. Brooks, I understand you have a particular passion about education in South Carolina, so I am looking forward to hearing your opinions. What's our first news article about?
So there was a South Carolina bill that was going to advance, and it was their attempt to address the teacher shortages.
I have a clip from WLTX News, and we can get a summary of what that's about here.
Got it.
This school year started with 1,400 teacher vacancies in our state. That's according to the Center for Education and Recruitment, Retention, and Advancement.
Now a bill advancing in the South Carolina House could pave the way for non-certified experts to fill some of those gaps. News 19's Becky Buds has the details.
The House Education Committee unanimously sent this bill to the full House floor for debate. However, teachers' advocates are skeptical of its impact.
Vacancies have been growing. This is a disservice to students in South Carolina, and if we can't find a way to retain our great teachers, then we're not meeting the mark for our students.
The bill would create a 5-year pilot program allowing most schools to fill up to a quarter of their teaching staff with non-certified instructors. Patrick Kelly with the Palmetto State Teachers Association isn't crazy about the idea, but says having non-certified teachers in school is better than the alternative.
Certification matters. The research shows it. It matters for student achievement. The shortage is great, and if this is a way to get one more student access to a highly qualified teacher on a short-term basis, then it's probably where we're at as a state, which is an unfortunate reality that this is even necessary.
Under the proposal, individuals must hold a college degree in the field they're hired to teach and have at least 5 years of on-the-job experience. They would need to get certified within 3 years if they want to continue teaching beyond that. The bill requires ongoing training, but leaves the details to the schools and the Department of Education. Representative Cambrell Garvin says this is key.
There won't just be people walking off the street who have no experience and who won't have any sort of help with classroom management, but these people will be undergoing rigorous training from their school district that will help alleviate any concerns that I had, and I hope that others have as well.
Lawmakers also tacked on separate legislation that would make educators' professional teaching certificates permanent and allows teachers to bow out of their contracts once they see their salary.
It's wonderful to have the bill with the alternative certification and to give options for bringing other people into the classroom, but we should also be taking care of the teachers who are already in the classroom.
The pilot program would expire in 5 years unless lawmakers pass a new bill to renew it. Reporting at the State House, Becky Buds, News 19 WLTX.
So what do you think about that? Everything I saw up there seemed reasonable?
The only issue is, one, you're going to have somebody in those classrooms. 2, they're not saying no to training, which is definitely required. So we're saying 5 years on a job, and you still have to go and have the certification.
Within 3 years.
Within 3 years. Now, the only issue that I see there is they said that the districts will determine what that training looks like because the individual still will go through training. So it's just about what you deal with is currently with the certifications that you have in place in South Carolina. Every teacher, let's say 9th through 12th teacher, if you're Kate, every teacher there has taken that certification, both parts of it, and passed it. So we can surely say...
Let's pause. What's in this certification? What's required here?
Well, there are 2 parts, right? So I'm a PACE graduate. So let me say that I am not an education major. That's important to note out. So here's my stance on this. I was employer in the field for years, went through a program called PACE, which is an alternative method to becoming an educator. And in that program, when I went through, I had my doctorate degree. That didn't matter. What I still had to do was to complete, I think it was maybe a 12-week program. I might be off because it's been a couple years of weekly trainings. And then you have assignments to do that are just giving you the foundations of this is what teaching looks like. This is what you need to be able to do. That's through the PACE program. Very good program, by the way. And then once you got that, you were able to take the 2 certifications that were offered. And each of those certifications, they're not necessarily, there are teachers who have difficulty passing that. Even if they've gone through the education programs, they still have a challenge passing that. So if you look at the data, I'm sure you'll find that there are some teachers who've completed the programs but just can't pass the second part of the praxis. So there are 2 parts. The first part is general information. This is what should you do in these situations, and it's you might have a little bit of theory, but for me, the second part of the praxis was full of theory, where you needed to know how to respond and why you would respond a certain way based off of theorists.
So the question about this proposal, which didn't pass, by the way, and I'll come to that at the end, but this basically says certification after 3 years of on the job.
Yeah.
What does that tell you about the necessity of certification then? So therefore you have people teaching classrooms for up to 3 years without being certified. To me, that sounds like it cheapens the certification. It's like, well, you know what? We think certification is important, but for those first 3 years, the hundreds of students you work with aren't going to have the benefit of a certified teacher and that training you get as a part of that process.
No, I don't think it cheapens the certification. I think it increases the focus that you don't have enough people to get it done.
No, there's
and
that,
so,
but again, 3 years, why not 5 years? Why not 10 years to get your certification? Why not 6 months? Hey, this certification's critical. You've got to get that in your first year. That to me would give a more powerful message.
But in your first year, there's no way that a first-year educator, and I'm going to call you a second employment educator, right? There's no way that you would be able to
get it done. So that comes back to my point is, how important is that certification before you let people work with your kids in a live setting? And apparently, according to this law, they would let people for 3 years work with your kids without that certification.
Well, I believe what they intend to do is have, like I said, have something at the district level, which is a specialized training program for your district. The district superintendents know what their students need. So I think that they would develop it based off of what was said here. That was the intention. But you need that certification. For me, I came from college and went to high school. So teaching is something that I knew how to do from the college level. But I still had a gap that I had to close to come down to the secondary level.
I had to get teacher certification as well. I got my master's in arts and teaching and became a certified instructor to work in the schools. They wouldn't have let me in without it.
Yeah.
Nor, looking back in hindsight, would I have wanted to walk into a classroom without knowing all I learned from that certification process, and to be in a classroom for up to 3 years without it would have been disastrous.
It's scary.
Disastrous for the kids.
I don't know who was speaking, but whoever spoke, and she said that we had to make sure we took care of the teachers that were there. I think that's really important too, and that's a lot of what you get on what's happening.
I want to highlight that. In South Carolina, you are required to sign a contract with a school district.
You are.
Before you even know what your salary is going to be.
You are.
Think about that.
Well,
what other employment out there would you accept a position before they tell you, okay, here's what we're going to pay you for that, and make you sign the contract?
So when I first saw the contract, and I'm not an attorney, let me just disclaim that, I never put any value on that contract because I knew that if I did not want to work at that institution, I wouldn't. Now, that was for me. Not all people can do that. And if you follow what's happening right now, like I can look and be able to pinpoint individuals who are trapped in their contract that they signed. They held out to the very last moment.
The trap is that they could lose their certification by if they broke the contract. That's really the only ramification.
Correct.
But what this proposal in this law was, no, let's make these certifications permanent and not tied to the contract so that teachers can be a little more free to break the contract before their wages are known.
That's not going to happen.
No. Well, and that brings up the last point here. It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
The bill passed the Senate. It then also passed this House subcommittee that we just heard.
Yeah.
They put some amendments on it, kicked it back up to the Senate. The Senate had some more amendments, kicked it down to the House. And in the House, it was unanimously. Every last one of them rejected it.
Yeah.
And so the legislative cycle ran out in May, and this is no longer a law. But we still bring this up and say it's current because what doesn't work in 1 year is going to be brought up again in the subsequent year, and we need to be aware of this.
Yeah, we know that there's a problem. We know that we're not producing enough of service industry individuals. So we know that. I just
want to point out that this teacher vacancy is hit an all-time high.
Yeah.
And let's take a look. Who is our superintendent of education responsible for all this?
To me, that is her intent. Her intent is to make the public school system suffer as much as possible.
Well, that brings us to our next article because we're going to see more of evidence of that claim that Jamil Brooks brought up that was very bold. Let's talk about the South Carolina State Department of Education has implemented a statewide book ban policy, one of the strongest in the nation. Let me play a clip of this so we can hear what it's all about.
South Carolina's new book ban regulation is pegged as one of the nation's most restrictive. The Fact Check team's Janae Bowens is here. Tell us, first of all, Janae, what does this policy say?
Yeah, Dee Dee, so I've been looking through this new regulation, and I have it right there. It requires books containing any descriptions or visual depictions of sexual conduct to be removed from South Carolina's public schools. Now, our Columbia station reports some parents say guidelines need to be implemented to make a uniform policy. Others say the regulation is vague and could open the door forward to banning several books that are age appropriate and necessary for children. The regulation will be in effect when students return in the fall.
What does the regulation say if a parent has a concern about a book?
Yeah, so it does hit on that, and I have that section pulled up for you. Starting August 1st, parents can file a complaint with their district school board about a book or any material they feel should be removed from the curriculum. The district board will hold a public meeting to consider the complaint, hear from the public, and take a vote. Now, if the parent disagrees with the district board, they can file an appeal to the state board, and the state board would review and make a decision.
So this is the pressing topic that State Superintendent Ellen Weaver is pursuing. While we have an all-time high in teacher vacancies, apparently this is going to help solve that problem. It also harkens back to a discussion you and I had. This goes back to episode 16 in November of last year. Do you remember this? I'm going to play this because this talks about the book that's about to get banned from all schools in South Carolina. This policy would ban books for all students if they include descriptions or visual depictions of sexual conduct, or if they include content that could not be portrayed or read aloud on broadcast television or radio during daytime hours. Let me quote for you from a book that's in all of our South Carolina libraries at the moment. Here's a quote. "She lusted for the lechers of Egypt, whose members are like those of donkeys, whose thrusts are like those of stallions. When Egyptians fondled your breasts, caressing your young nipples." That is Ezekiel verses 20 to 21 in the Holy Bible. If you're going to write a law written like that, then say goodbye to your Bibles. Because it's going to be gone. It does not meet those standards. And that just points out how ridiculous those standards are.
So my face still looks the same whenever we have this topic. I'm watching that, and then I realized I had that same look. There it is. I had that same look. And so in this policy that was approved that we missed is the need for all South Carolina funded libraries, school libraries, to submit their book list. And it has to be approved or you don't get a certain set of funds. So you got to let them know what's on that book list. And if it's a book that they didn't say, they're still checking it from the top to the bottom to say what you can and can't read. And if a parent, I still say, let parents parent. If a parent doesn't want a child to read about them dang on donkeys that you just used in this illustration, then don't bring them donkeys out. You tell your kid, don't bring that book home with them donkeys in it. It's talking about Egyptians, and they fondling, don't bring that home. That's a conversation for the parents, but you are going through and strategically moving to remove a certain set of content. And this is not to be overlooked. There's a strategy here. And I just don't know why more people aren't just like losing it from the fact that they are gutting the public education system.
According to the State House report, they say that this ban has received criticism from both sides of the aisle. So, of course, you've got the left side, the ACLU of South Carolina. They're, of course, going to denounce this as a part of a troubling nationwide book ban trend. But then, interestingly, on the right side of the aisle, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, that's FIRE, is the name of this organization. They're known for opposing cancel culture on college campuses and things like that. They've come out and said, this means schools have to ban 18-year-old high school seniors from encountering any library books that describe sex, which could include staples of high school reading lists like Brave New World, The Color Purple, and 1984. And, you know, it's absolutely true. This is a ludicrous policy to impose this statewide. And here's the worst part. The South Carolina Department of Education, headed by unqualified Ellen Weaver, says, no, this is not a book ban because you can still buy the books yourselves at, bookstores and online. We're not banning the book.
Oh, that wasn't approved.
This is the most common, stupid counter arguments to these book bans that I've never heard. Are you allowed to have this book in a school library? If the answer is no, what have you just done with that book? You've banned it.
You've banned it.
You've banned it.
You've banned this book. Yeah.
So what a stupid response.
Listen, I need for people to stop focusing on parties and focus on what these people are doing. Yet again, if South Carolina's reading and math scores are always at the bottom, that ain't where you focusing. You done spend a buttload of money to figure out which goddamn on books to ban and to tell people how they can regulate their households with books and reading. But you hadn't put anything and spent no time in figuring out how to get the reading and the math scores up in South Carolina. That's your role as a superintendent, not checking a book list. You got librarians who have masters and doctorates in those fields. Let them handle that. You handle the role of making sure you take South Carolina's educational positioning from the bottom of the list to the top of the list, and taking away books ain't the way to go in a state that already places low when it comes down to book and reading scores.
Now, if none of that was convincing you that this was a terrible thing, this last bit really should infuriate you if you are a person who believes in due process. Did you know that this ban went into effect without a single vote being taken by our state legislature?
That's why I said we missed it. We missed it.
Not a single vote. So this group, the State Department of Education, had this rule they put out there, and typically the General Assembly scrutinizes and votes on new regulations within 120 days of the time they're formally proposed. And if the legislators don't act, then it automatically goes into effect.
It's timing.
And there were lawmakers that were begging the House and the Senate to take this up and debate it. Didn't make it on their radar because they were too busy going after transgender kids and their care. And then this became law of the land, which is just absolutely the worst way to legislate. Absolutely the worst way.
But this is, again, the same thing, and you should be tired of me saying it. So we need a new button that you can press when you know it's a distraction. This is another way to distract us from the real issues.
Challenge accepted.
Okay, thank you.
So if your eyes weren't feeling sore enough from rolling on that last article, wait till you hear this one. We're going to talk about Ascent Classical Academy, a group of charter schools nationwide that have made inroads into South Carolina, and in this one particular case, with disastrous consequences. Imagine this was you and your kids. Take a watch.
Tonight, some parents are trying to figure out what to do after a charter school announced it won't be able to open next month as planned. Less than 24 hours ago, Ascent Classical Charter told parents that due to a permit problem, they can't take students this upcoming year. News 19's Walker Lawson explains that's left some parents scrambling for an option for their kids.
We start in a month. It's just confusion, shock, frustration.
Nathan Arnold and Will King are only two of many parents spending their 4th of July weekend feeling blindsided after receiving this email from Ascent Classical that their kids would not be able to attend what was supposed to be the first day of classes on August 8th. The school now saying they wouldn't open until the fall of 2025.
I mean, we had ordered the books, had started prepping them on those things. Ordered uniforms.
The school was to open in the St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church as a temporary campus. Ascent said it was told they needed to go to the town of Irmo and its contractor to approve that use. They thought that process was moving along, but they said on June 26th, they were told there was a problem, saying in a statement the contractor unexpectedly withdrew from the project, claiming the project exceeded the scope of work required in their contract with the town of Irmo, and the town's leadership supported their contractor's position. So News 19 reached out to the town of Irmo, who said they're not responsible for the postponement of the school's opening and said there's misinformation out there. They said they were asked by the Department of Education to conduct the permit process, but they never accepted that role. Town leaders said their third-party inspectors said they couldn't give the school a permit under the rules of their contract with the town. They also said in a statement that a review of the building identified several issues requiring discussion, including traffic concerns related to the 3 nearby schools, as well as fire code and ADA accessibility compliance. As for families like the Arnolds, it's left them scrambling for where their kids will be going to school in just a month.
So homeschool is out of the window. The co-op window's passed. Private schools are both very expensive and very far from here, and I believe the window is out on those. I don't know. I'll have to pivot and check and see what's going on.
Walker Lawson, News 19, WLTX.
The State Department of Education said they're still involved. They said they hope to reach a resolution to best serve students and families soon.
Okay, so that just means now y'all got to come back to this public school that y'all done took everything out of.
So let's put the sequence of events here. Here's a charter school that wants to open. They needed to get permits to do so. The State Department of Education, headed by unqualified Ellen Weaver, said, you need to go to the town of Irmo and they'll get you all the contracts. Irmo's like, this ain't us. And so Ascent was given bad direction from the State Department of Education. Irma's like, we're not responsible for this. This is not part of our law. We didn't accept this. And so now all the parents are caught in the crossfire, and there's not going to be any school for them come the fall. And oh my gosh, they're going to have to figure out how to work through public school system.
They didn't took everything out, so.
But the story doesn't end there. This is why I brought this up. So first, who is Ascent Classical Academy? I did some digging, and boy, did this go from rabbit hole to rabbit hole to rabbit hole. By the way, that last clip came again from WTLX News, so I want to make sure I give them proper credit on that. Who is Ascent Classical Academy? Well, let's talk from the Post and Courier, shall we? They are a Colorado-based network of charter schools. So this isn't just a South Carolina thing. This is across the nation. They tout a traditional education style. They have connections to religious colleges, and they aim to open 4 of these academies in South Carolina over the next few years. They say that students get an American classical education and lays out a focus on, quote, Western tradition. Their CEO described the classical educational model as, quote, well-rounded liberal arts education with an intentional focus on virtue. They have connections to the K-12 initiative run by Hillsdale College. Does that name ring a bell?
I think it does.
Hillsdale College, a small Christian school in Michigan that plays an active role in U.S. conservative politics and political thought, whose K-12 office works with schools across the country to promote classical education. Do you remember that clip about Christopher Columbus from, what was that online? PragerU.
I remember
that clip where Christopher Columbus said, what's the big deal about slavery from PragerU? That was Hillsdale College. Now, what is Hillsdale College? Let's explore them a little bit. They're a conservative Christian school based in Michigan. They're also going through a lawsuit right now. Headline from Detroit News: Hillsdale College campus has high risk of rape due to its failed response, lawsuit says. So basically, the lawyer who filed this litigation says when brave students report their experiences of sexual assault to school officials, they are met not with support, but with sham investigations, arbitrary decisions, and punishments. In response to calls for transparency and accountability, Hillsdale instead silences and threatens survivors, blaming them, not their assailants, for their assaults. And it gets even worse. From Salon, this goes back a couple of years, but did you know that at Hillsdale College, a former college president, George Roach III, resigned after his daughter-in-law publicly confessed. See, daughter-in-law, what's that relationship? That's your son's wife, right?
Yeah.
After his daughter-in-law confessed to having a nearly 20-year sexual relationship with him after 20 years of marriage to the son, and then she killed herself with a gun on campus. That's Hillsdale College. Oh, did I mention that Hillsdale College is on the advisory board of Project 2025? Let's roll this back up to Ascent Classical Academy, shall we? They have received permission with all these nebulous, dubious, nefarious connections. They have received unanimous approval to open 3 schools in South Carolina and 2 more in the future. And guess which charter institute gave them the thumbs up? You only get one guess.
In South Carolina.
Yes.
That's got to be Erskine.
Erskine. Erskine College gave them the thumbs up to say, go right ahead with our blessing. And now we see that this one in Irmo isn't even going to open because they are so disconnected from the state education department, who doesn't know who can permit things and who doesn't. And so there's a disaster there for the kids that were planning to get a Western traditional education. And finally, let's talk about Erskine, because they made the news in the state recently. And here's the subheadline: the private Christian college behind South Carolina's largest charter school district says it's out. $1 million after the operator of several schools the district oversaw defaulted on a loan deal. So Erskine College is essentially out there giving loans of cash that they could ill afford themselves. And now they're out $1 million because of a bad investment they made. Are you ready to move on to a more cheerful topic?
Because if this doesn't frighten people, I mean, when you go to describe Ascent Classical Academies, right? And then you talk about a Western education. It's just like, none of this makes sense to me. And then the structure of it, they keep going back to things that appear to be like a traditional biblical standpoint virtue. I don't mean no harm, but I ain't seen nobody that you named throughout this process that demonstrates virtue.
No, of course not. And I have been asked from time to time, what do I think about charter schools? And charter schools are publicly funded schools that sit outside of public school systems, and they have a different set of regulations and different set of rules. And in concept, I'm okay with it because there are some schools that should focus on special needs of students or the community. For example, think of a charter school for those who are blind or deaf or have other physical handicaps that may need special attention, or a musical charter school for the musically gifted, things like that. I see there's a certain place for it, but it has been abused in South Carolina to create religious private schools. And that's not what charter schools were for. In fact, the same parents that are screaming about indoctrination are out there wanting the tax dollars to pay for indoctrination. Right? These indoctrination academies. And as you heard from Erskine and you heard from Hillsdale College and all these connections, that's what they're after here. And it is just back to your point, an undermining of our public school system, which was meant to provide great quality education for all students. Those dollars are instead going to these academies of Christian
and
thought.
That's my biggest problem. So I'm glad that you stated in that way. My issue is not that there are charter schools exist. I do believe there's a need. My issue is that you are taking charter schools and you know exactly what you're doing. You have found a way to circumvent the system and throw in Christian ideologies and attach it to education, hiding it under a charter school umbrella, when it is truly doing the complete opposite. And that is my problem. It is a misuse of policies and procedures to set a particular group of individuals on a certain path. And as you mentioned, this to me looks like it's everything that it needs to be to continue to have the thought process that are associated with Agenda 47 or Project 2025. This is the way you can start them and grow them up into this world of separation and isolation from a community.
So in our final story for today, we're going to talk about a very interesting fact about Greenwood, South Carolina, which is where you and I live and are running for office. Greenwood is the name of the county with a population of around 70,000. And at its center is the city of Greenwood, population of 22,500. And we're going to focus on the city of Greenwood here.
Okay.
The city of Greenwood made news recently because of a report published by the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, also abbreviated as UCR, for 2022. In this report, they look at every city in the United States with a population of over 1,000. So the city of Greenwood qualifies. And they ranked the murder rates from worst to best. Among the top, of course, were big cities like New Orleans and St. Louis, and they had murder rates topping 70 per 100,000 people. Smaller cities, they ranked even higher with even 100 per 100,000 people. At the very top, with 262 murders per 100,000, is little old Greenwood, South Carolina. We are at the top of the list, and Jamil, there's no close second.
Wow.
We are so far above every other city, small and large, in terms of murder rate.
Yeah.
We top the charts. Now, Greenwood, city of Greenwood, doesn't have 100,000 people, so this rate of 262 per 100,000, that comes from 58 reported murders in 2022.
Okay.
So 58 murders out of 22,000 some people leads to the highest murder rate in the country. 58 murders in 2022. No other city came close. How do you feel about this, Jamil? Are you out there dodging bullets and knives on your way to and from work?
No, that's what I was going to say. I was here in 2022, and I don't remember 58 murders.
I mean, how many months in a year are there? That's
12.
12. So we're looking at more than 4 to 5 murders a month?
Yeah, no, I don't know about that.
I check. I read the Index Journal, the local paper, every day.
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing that. Well,
we're not that bad.
Anyhow, there was a data analyst. His name is Jeff Asher. He saw this report. Now, he's not affiliated with Greenwood, but he saw this report, and he says, this is a little odd. He dug into why Greenwood was so high. And he looked at South Carolina's UCR program. By the way, UCR, again, Unified Crime Reporting. And he saw that in the South Carolina's UCR report, not the FBI's, but the South Carolina one, the city only had 29 homicides, which was exactly half of what the FBI report showed.
Okay.
The fact that it's exactly half raises some flags.
Yeah.
And it showed 14 of those 29 homicides occurred in July 2022.
Okay, that's a typo.
Now, July of 2022, 14 murders in July of 2022. I was out there knocking doors that summer. I remember.
Okay.
I don't remember no 14 murders that month.
No.
I think that might have hit the headlines if that occurred.
Yeah.
Well, so he dug even further. It appears that according to news accounts and the Gun Violence Archive, so he went to different sources, this Jeff Asher found that the city of Greenwood in July 2022 had just 1 murder, not 14. Now that sounds a lot more like the news that I recall from that year. And he surmised, and he doesn't have definitive proof here, that the outrageous numbers occurred in 2 areas. One, for some reason, the FBI doubled the numbers that South Carolina had. But for some other reason, the police officers here in Greenwood were not coding attempted murders properly. So you perform an attempted murder, that was counted as murder. And I certainly can believe that there may have been 14 attempted murders, stabbings or shootings or what have you. But, when only 1 dies, but all 14 of them are recorded as murder, well, that skews the numbers.
Yeah, that'll throw your stats off.
Yes. So that's the plausible explanation, but there has been no correction of the report, no formal announcement made. But I think we can rest easy that we are truly not the murder capital of the United States. In fact, I wonder what it is in terms of world rankings.
Yeah.
But that's pretty high up there. I think we're just your typical small city with some good and some bad, and certainly 1 murder is 1 murder too many. I don't want to make light of that.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't 59 murders in a year, that's for sure.
No. Oh, no.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Black, White, and Blue in the South. We hope you enjoyed what you heard. Please take a quick minute and leave us a rating and a review of our show. If you do, we will be able to get the Black, White, and Blue in the South Classical Academy Charter School approved and chartered by Erskine College, allowing us to indoctrinate your kids with only the good stuff. And let's face it, if your kids are going to be indoctrinated by anybody, wouldn't you rather it be from us?
Yes.
If you are a blue dot in a red sea, keep the faith, keep up the hard work, Change only happens over many years of work and dedication. As author and University of South Carolina graduate Patrick Ness wrote, "To say you have no choice is to relieve yourself of responsibility."
Ooh, that's good.
So you may not like your choices, but to say I'm not going to decide means you're not responsible anymore.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Wow. I like that.
We will talk to you again in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody.
The end.
The preceding podcast is a product of Big Media and copyright 2024, all rights reserved.